Meeting is being recorded.
Works eventually. So, last week in our Torah portion, in V'yechanan, we repeated the Shema and the V'ahavta, the first blessing of the Shema, where we are commanded to teach them to our children when we rise up, when we lie down, bind them as signs upon our arms and our heads, which the rabbis have interpreted as tefillin, which we pray with, right? In this week's portion, Ekev, we get the second paragraph of the Shema. Doesn't really have a name, a little bit longer, but we get essentially the same commandments with one difference. In the V'ahavta, those commandments are individual. Okay, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and when you shall bind them as a sign. In the next paragraph, the longer paragraph, the second paragraph, it's in the plural. And that's the big difference. So not only are we commanded to remember and teach and bind them as individuals, but we're reminded to do that as a community in the second paragraph. Now, following the flow of the Torah, what do we get next week when we read the portion Re'eh? We have all sorts of community issues. What if a city or part of a city decides, Judaism is not really that interesting. It looks like the pagans are having a lot more fun. Of course, there's a cost to that, right? They don't tell you the other stuff, like all the violence that they do, but, they start to get enticed by some of their practices, and they decide that they want to practice some of that. Well, there are very severe penalties for that, very severe. And the rest of the community is supposed to take action. Now, maybe this is like the commandment of the wayward child, right? Who, if they do some excessive things, there's some dire consequences. And the rabbis tell us that that commandment was never filled. The dire consequences were never enacted on any child. Perhaps this is the same case, that even though the community is commanded to be put down by everybody, there's really no comment as to whether it ever happened or not. Maybe it's just there as a warning. And what is that warning? Peer pressure, right? We're reading today in our Miller course, the module of kids, right? And what do they say? When a kid is starting to grow, their bodies are starting to change, they're becoming more mature, their voices are cracking, their skins may be breaking out, they have to get up in front of people, their friends, and recite verses in a language that not only is foreign to them, but instead of going left to right, it goes right to left. And they do this in front of everybody. If that isn't a test of character, what is? But the point is, this is the age when people start to become aware of their peers. They start to do things for peer pressure. So it's very easy to succumb to a peer pressure. People do things in a mob that they wouldn't even conceive of doing alone. And that's really the warning. In Judaism, we take it one step further, and we say you're responsible for each other. That's why there are certain prayers that we cannot say unless we have a quorum of 10 adults. Because we need to all come together to do this, strength in numbers. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. United we stand, divided we fall. We've heard all of this. And that's really kind of part of the flow of what it's saying, and it's so is involved in modern society. Some of these protests that are going on, some of the people that are partaking don't even know what they're protesting. They have their interviews like, oh, river to the sea. Which river? The Pacific Ocean. They don't know. They're just doing it because everybody, you're a kid, you want to rebel, that's what you do, right? Okay? The point is, you need to think for yourself. That's why, think of it this way. The V'ahavta, which is the individual commandments, comes before the group commandments. To do it as a group. Know yourself, strengthen yourself so that you will not succumb to the temptations of other practices. And that's really kind of the point, I think. one of the points. There are many. But I think when you look at the flow of the Torah, how it goes from the Ten Commandments to the V'ahavta and the Shema and the V'ahavta, to the second paragraph of the V'ahavta with the group commandments, okay? And to the consequences, if those commandments are not followed by the group, you will see that one leads to the other. It's not just random, it's one tends to lead to the other. So we need to be strong within ourselves so we can make a strong community. Let's not forget that.